How to Think Correctly. Timeless Lessons for a Clearer Mind. Stoic Wisdom. What if the way you've been thinking is the very reason you feel stuck? Not your circumstances, not your past, but the lens you're using to see the world. Change. And you don't just change your thoughts, you change your life. There's a silent war happening in your mind every day, between what you know and what you actually do, and most people lose it quietly, by repeating the same day over and over. But if you can learn to think clearly, wisely, and with purpose, everything changes. Most people never change, not because they don't want to, but because they don't know how to think differently. What if ancient wisdom, not more motivation, is the missing key to the life you've been searching for? You're not broken, you're not weak, and you're certainly not lazy or lost. You're simply tired from all the overthinking, from carrying invisible burdens no one sees, from trying to solve problems that never seem to have clear answers. It's not a lack of motivation, it's mental exhaustion. And in a world that demands constant clarity, that exhaustion can feel like failure. Each morning, you rise with that same dull weight pressing on your chest. Not always panic, not always sadness, but something heavier, an unshakable fog of confusion. You've got a hunger to move forward, to make something of yourself, but you don't know how. You're not lacking willpower. What you're lacking is a philosophy, a way to think clearly, steadily, and with purpose. This isn't one of those videos filled with fluffy clichés or empty affirmations. This is different. It's not here to hype you up for 10 minutes and then leave you crashing afterward. No, what you're about to hear is something ancient, something timeless. A set of principles rooted in Stoicism, a philosophy born from hardship, crafted for people like you, people trying to make sense of a chaotic world. Stoicism won't hand you an easy life, but it will give you the tools to reclaim control over the one thing you do truly own: your mind, yourself. And when you begin to think clearly, when you begin to think rightly, everything changes. Not from the outside in, but from the inside. Let's begin. Lesson 1. See beyond the present. The first shift is simple but powerful. You must learn to see further, not just with your eyes but with your understanding. You haven't been misled by some evil force or cursed by bad luck. You've been quietly, subtly influenced by the culture surrounding you, a culture that screams, live in the moment. Seize the day. Do what makes you happy now. It sounds poetic, even wise. But taken blindly, that mantra becomes a trap. It invites impatience, feeds restlessness, and blinds you to the long view. Stoicism doesn't ask you to ignore the present moment. It simply reminds you not to be enslaved by it. Yes, live here and now, but in service of something greater. A tree doesn't reach toward the sky unless it first roots itself deep into the ground. So the question becomes, are you planting roots or simply waiting for fruit to fall? The truth is, success doesn't grow from urgency. It grows from depth, from patience, from direction. Look at Netflix. In 1997, it was a humble DVD by mail service. No headlines, no buzz. Just a quiet little idea, easy to overlook. They lost money for years. They even tried to sell themselves to Blockbuster for $50 million and got rejected. Most companies would have called it quits right there. But Netflix didn't fold. They evolved. They embraced the future before it was obvious. They invested in streaming long before the world was ready. They started making original shows when it seemed like a losing bet. Why? Because they weren't thinking about short-term wins. They were thinking long-term. They saw with vision, not with impulse. This kind of clarity is the heartbeat of Stoic thinking. A Stoic doesn't chase instant gratification. They understand that good things, real things, take time to build. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Dig within. Within is the wellspring of good, and it is always ready to bubble up if you just dig." But let's be honest, digging is hard. It's slow, repetitive, and often lonely. That's why so many settle for a life lived on the surface. They want the fruit, but skip the planting. They want success, but ignore the systems. They want peace, but avoid the process. Long-term thinking isn't some fluffy idea. It's not about dreaming big. It's about design. It's about asking yourself, not just where do I want to be in 5 years, but what can I do today that nudges me 1% closer to that vision? Without a long-term perspective, you become like a boat without a rudder. You might float, sure, but you'll never arrive anywhere meaningful. So pause for a moment. Look at your daily routine, what you read, who you spend time with, the work you do, the habits you repeat. Are they part of a foundation, or are they just helping you forget that you feel off course? Here's something practical. Write down 3 things, just 3, that you know would change your life if you did them every day. Now ask yourself, why aren't you doing them? There's a tool I call reverse mapping. It's simple. Start with the future you want. Picture it vividly. 5 years from now. What does that life look like? Now break it down. What needs to happen in year 4, in year 3, this year, this month, this week, today? By reverse engineering your dream into tiny daily steps, the impossible becomes concrete. You stop drifting toward distraction because you finally know what matters. And here's the beautiful paradox. Thinking long-term doesn't make you anxious. It actually makes you calm. Because now you're not in a rush to make it. You're not haunted by someone else's timeline. You're no longer measuring your progress by how flashy your life looks on the outside. You become rooted, steady, grounded. Every small step becomes sacred. Every delay becomes bearable. Every failure becomes a teacher. Because patience, contrary to what many believe, isn't passive. It's power. It's knowing what you're building. It's believing that invisible progress is still progress. When you plant a seed, you don't rip it out every day to check if it's growing. You water it, you protect it, you give it time. But none of this matters if you spend your energy complaining. Let's be honest. Life doesn't owe you anything, and no amount of complaining will build the life you want. In fact, that's the next piece of the puzzle. Lesson 2. Build more, complain less. It's tempting to think that complaining is just venting, a harmless release valve for frustration. But what if I told you that every complaint is actually a tax on your willpower? Every time you complain, you leak energy that could have been used to build something. Marcus Aurelius said it plainly. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. So why give that power away to rent prices, to your boss, to the economy, to traffic, to fate? The Stoic doesn't waste time blaming things beyond their control. They don't panic when things go wrong. They don't fall into despair when the road gets hard. They observe. They accept reality. And then, they build. They take the raw material of inconvenience and transform it into value. Look at Drew Houston, the founder of Dropbox. One day he was sitting on a bus and realized he'd forgotten his USB drive. Most people would have groaned, complained, said, "That's just my luck." But not Drew. He asked, "What if I never had to carry a USB stick again?" That question sparked a revolution in file storage, same with Airbnb. In 2007, 2 broke guys in San Francisco couldn't pay rent. Hotel prices were sky high. They didn't moan about it. They didn't get bitter. They got curious. What if people with spare space could host guests like a bed and breakfast? Action, not outrage. That's the mindset. That's the shift. Stop looking for someone to blame and start asking what you can build, even in traffic, even when tired, even when the odds are against you. Too many people sit around wondering why they're stuck while spending hours telling their friends how unfair life is. What if you asked instead, how can I make myself so valuable the world can't ignore me? And no, you don't need to launch a startup. You can start right now, right where you are, one small moment at a time. If you're stuck in traffic, don't curse, learn something, listen to a podcast, reflect, grow. If you think you don't have time to learn a skill, check your day. How much of it is lost to idle complaining, scrolling, and mental noise? Sometimes what holds you back isn't a lack of talent, it's a mastery of complaining. Complaining is seductive because it feels like action, but it's not. It's a quiet killer of momentum, a subtle saboteur of drive. Every complaint is like handing over the keys to your future, and that is not Stoic strength. Stoic strength is ownership of your thoughts, your reactions, your path. The world doesn't reward the loudest complaint. It rewards the quiet builder who asks, what can I do about it? As Proverbs says, in all toil there is profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. Real value is born in effort, not in noise. And the best part? You can start this shift today. The next time you're about to complain, pause, breathe, and ask, what can I do right now to move this forward, even by 1%? Make a call, send a message, try something, anything. One small action outweighs 1,000 perfectly worded complaints. And if you're wondering what kind of person lives this way, what kind of person refuses to complain and instead chooses to build, I'll show you in the next lesson. But first, remember this. Successful people aren't the ones who never struggle. They're the ones who waste the least time blaming and spend the most time creating. Lesson 3. Turn fails into fuel. Here's a truth that many people resist. Failure isn't the end. It's not a sign that you're broken or incapable. It's not a verdict. It's a doorway. Most people see failure as the final chapter, a full stop. But the wise, those who live with clarity, discipline, and a deeper understanding of life, they see failure for what it really is. A restart button, only now, with more data. Let me show you what that looks like in the real world. There's a company you probably know, Rovio. They're the creators of Angry Birds. But before Angry Birds became a cultural phenomenon, with over 4 billion downloads, merchandise, cartoons, and even movies, Rovio was on the brink of disappearing. They had released 51 games, 51, and none of them really stuck. Employees quit. Finances tanked. Bankruptcy loomed over them like a shadow. But they didn't stop. They tried one more time. Game number 52. Angry Birds. What if they had quit at 50? What if they had decided that 51 failures meant they weren't meant for success? We'd have never heard of them. But they didn't throw in the towel. Instead, they treated each failure as feedback. They studied what didn't work. They refined, they iterated, and they kept going. That's the difference. It's not about falling, it's about using every fall as a stepping stone. That's how transformation works. Nike's story is the same. Before it was Nike, it was a tiny operation called Blue Ribbon Sports. Phil Knight, the founder, sold shoes out of the trunk of his car. He ran out of money. Banks rejected him. Suppliers dropped him. He got sued. He almost went personally bankrupt. But with each setback, he adapted. He learned. He sharpened his instincts, improved his strategy, and kept showing up. Every stumble was like a rep in a mental gym, strengthening his will. That's how he built Nike. Not with a stroke of luck, but with relentless learning. This is the beauty of failure. It's not just painful, it's educational. Your brain is wired to learn from mistakes. Neuroscientists call it neuroplasticity, your brain's ability to rewire itself. When you try something, fail, and try again, your brain literally restructures, strengthens its connections. You evolve. So every time you fall short, you're not just bruised. You're being upgraded. Your thinking becomes more refined. You begin to anticipate problems. You start moving with clarity. Mistakes become the training ground for wisdom. Growth doesn't come from never failing. It comes from falling and then adjusting with precision. This is called the feedback loop. You act, you reflect, you adjust, you try again. Not blindly, but thoughtfully. If you're not learning from feedback, then yes, failure stays failure. But if you take failure as raw material, something to examine and learn from, it becomes a blueprint, a guide. Amazon lives this philosophy. So does Spotify. These companies don't avoid failure, they embrace it, they test, they fail, they analyze, they improve. Again and again. It's not that they're lucky, it's that they're committed to growth. Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That obstacle you're staring at? It's not blocking your path, it is the path. Failure doesn't slow the Stoic down. It shapes them. So here's something to ask yourself. Have you ever quit something, not because it wasn't meant for you, but because it got hard too quickly? How many dreams have you walked away from because your first attempt didn't go perfectly? And if you could revisit those moments, what would they teach you now? Maybe they weren't dead ends. Maybe they were unread chapters. Here's a practical exercise for the next time you fail. Write down 3 things. What did I misjudge? How did I respond emotionally? What will I do differently next time? Don't just let failure fade. Turn it into data. Every experience in life carries information. The right information leads to the right action. That's how you move from merely existing to truly evolving. But, and this is crucial, failure alone isn't enough. You need conscious failure. You have to reflect. You have to decide what the lesson is. Failure rewards the ones who continue, not blindly, but with awareness. Be brave enough to fall, and braver still to rise with intention. If you don't see yourself failing at anything right now, maybe you're not aiming high enough. Maybe you're not stretching into the zone where growth lives. Because failure, real failure, is proof that you're doing something that matters. The question isn't, how can I avoid being wrong? The real question is, what am I learning when I am wrong? That shift in mindset is everything. It doesn't make failure easier, but it makes it meaningful. It turns falling into fuel. And once you begin to build from failure, you become dangerous, in the best way. Because you're no longer afraid of the stumble. You understand that the road to greatness is paved with setbacks, and once that switch flips, another question emerges. How do I keep growing? Especially when it feels like I've hit a ceiling. That leads us to our next lesson. Lesson 4. Learn without limits. Graduation is not the end of learning. It's merely a checkpoint. The truly successful know this. Learning never ends. It's not a phase. It's a way of life. Too many people stop feeding their minds after they leave school. They think they know enough, they've read the textbooks, passed the exams, got the degree. They think they're set. But the world keeps evolving. And so must you. Reality has a way of catching up fast. When the economy shifts, when technology advances, when industries change, Those who stop learning get left behind, not because they're not smart, but because they became stagnant. The most powerful people in the world aren't the ones who knew everything. They're the ones who keep learning. Think about Leonardo da Vinci, a man who didn't just paint masterpieces, he dissected cadavers to understand anatomy. He studied astronomy, mechanics, fluid dynamics. He left behind over 13,000 pages of notes filled with ideas that still inspire scientists today. No one told him to do it. He was self-taught, self-driven. He learned because he had to, because his curiosity never died. That's what lifelong learning looks like. Kobe Bryant lived this mindset too. He didn't just master the basketball court, he learned new languages, studied filmmaking, immersed himself in other cultures. After retiring, he won an Academy Award for an animated film he wrote and narrated. Dear Basketball, he didn't box himself in. He saw himself as a student of life. And that's the question you have to ask yourself. What labels are you clinging to that might be limiting your growth? Sometimes it's not that we lack intelligence, it's that we've decided too early what we're supposed to be. There's a psychological pattern called the Dunning-Kruger effect. It says that people with little knowledge often overestimate how much they know. Meanwhile, the truly skilled see just how vast the unknown is. They stay humble, curious, open. Are you humble enough to admit what you don't know? Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If someone can show me I'm wrong, I will gladly change, for it's the truth I seek, not to be right." That's the Stoic spirit. You don't learn to win arguments. You learn to see clearly. This is the core of what Carol Dweck calls the growth mindset. The idea that talent isn't fixed, that ability can be cultivated, that intelligence can grow with effort. You don't say, "I'm not good at this." You say, "I'm not good at this yet." That tiny word opens a door, because now, instead of being stuck in shame, you're standing in potential. Where are you holding yourself back because you think you're not naturally gifted? The truth is, most people who succeed didn't get there through talent. They got there through repetition, through thousands of quiet, private moments of trying, failing, adjusting, and trying again. And no, you don't need to read 100 books a year or go back to school. Start small. Read 10 pages a day, not to impress anyone, but to stretch your perspective. Spend 15 minutes learning something practical. Maybe it's how to write better emails, or how to listen without interrupting, or how to use a tool more efficiently. And don't forget the people around you. Watch those who are better than you, not to compare, but to learn. Observe their habits, their focus, their mindset. The moment you believe you don't know enough, the world opens up, because here's the truth. If you're not growing, you're slowly falling behind. What you knew yesterday isn't enough for tomorrow. No, you don't need to be Da Vinci, you don't need to be Kobe, but you do need to be a version of yourself that learns every single day. So ask yourself, what did I learn today? Not what did I consume? What did I actually absorb, question, and integrate? If you're still here, still listening, it means you're ready to step into that deeper level of learning. It means you're not here for surface level advice, you're here to grow at the root level. And if this is resonating, stay with me, because in the next part, we'll explore one of the most important mental shifts of all: how to stop thinking like an employee and start thinking like an owner. Because your life doesn't change when you get a new job title. It changes when you take ownership, even before anyone asks you to. Lesson 5. Think like an owner. Now let's get into one of the most subtle but transformative shifts in your entire mindset. If you master this, everything else in your life will begin to evolve faster, deeper, and with more clarity. You have to learn to think not like an employee but like an owner. Here's what that means. You weren't born just to follow instructions. You weren't created to simply show up, tick boxes, and wait for the weekend. That kind of thinking, clock in, clock out, get by, isn't living, it's surviving. When you see yourself as nothing more than a cog in the machine, that's exactly what you become. Replaceable, predictable, disposable, and worst of all, disconnected from your own potential. But the Stoics never taught people to see themselves as victims of fate or servants of systems. No, they believed in agency, in autonomy, in choosing how you respond to life, even when the conditions are tough, unfair, or unpredictable. Real power, they said, doesn't come from your job title or the money in your bank account. It comes from your mindset, from the way you choose to see your role, your responsibility, and your purpose. Right now, in this moment, you are either walking through life like someone waiting for instructions, or like someone building something greater than themselves. And the truth is, there's a clear dividing line in this world. People who think like owners carve their own path. They create momentum. They don't wait to be told. They look at every situation, every problem, every challenge, every opportunity and ask, how can this be better? They don't say, is this my job? They say, if I can improve this, I will. That's ownership. It's not about chasing recognition or clinging to credit. It's about knowing that every single choice you make is a brick in the foundation of your legacy. And here's the paradox. People who adopt an ownership mindset, who stop waiting for authority and start being the authority, they almost always get the respect, the influence, and the rewards that others spend their whole lives hoping for. Look at John Combe. Most people don't know his name, but they know what he built. WhatsApp. Before WhatsApp was a billion-user platform, John was cleaning supermarket floors. He lived on food stamps. No fancy degree, no connections, no golden path. Just a quiet conviction that if he didn't change, his mindset, 5 years would go by and he'd still be in the same place. So he walked to a public library, taught himself to code, read, practiced, studied the ecosystem. No mentors, no promises, just hunger, direction, ownership. He didn't complain. He didn't wait. He didn't say, well, no one's giving me a chance. He gave himself one. That wasn't just ambition. That was stoicism in action. No self-pity, no blame. Just clear, calm, determined forward motion. You see, stoicism doesn't tell you that the world is fair. It tells you that you are still responsible even when the world is not. It says, you don't control the storm, but you can train yourself to sail through it. You can respond with discipline, with learning, with relentless inner direction. And once you begin to live this way, truly live it, not just understand it, you'll notice something. You stop obsessing over credit. You stop saying things like, that's not my job. You stop needing to be noticed because you've become someone who notices. You become the person who sees an inefficient process and improves it, who sees a gap in communication and bridges it, who spots a weakness in the system and strengthens it, not because anyone asked, but because that's who you've chosen to be. That's ownership. You don't need to be in charge to act like a leader. You don't need a promotion to start creating value, because value, real, lasting value, is impossible to ignore. Let me ask you something. Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why should I care? It's not my responsibility. Or maybe you've stayed quiet when you had a solution, because no one asked you. Those little moments matter more than you think. They reveal whether you're building your future or just clocking time in someone else's. See, a good employee shows up and finishes tasks, but a person with ownership, they see beyond the task. They see the system, the potential, the ripple effects. They see how one improvement today could save hours tomorrow. They think like investors, not laborers, focused on compounding value, not instant rewards. And yes, the principle of compounding applies to more than just money. It applies to trust, to knowledge, to effort. You want to be trusted like a leader? Start acting like one. Even when no one's looking, especially then. Because here's the truth. The world may not always reward effort immediately, but it will always eventually recognize value that compounds. People who own their destiny don't wait to be discovered. They choose themselves. And when they do, when they start acting like the outcome depends on them, those are the people who almost always get the roles, the opportunities, and the respect that others only dream about. Now I want you to sit with this next question. When was the last time you made something better without being told to? When was the last time you looked around and said, "This isn't ideal, but I can take the first step anyway"? If your answer is hard to find, don't worry. It just means you found your growth edge. This is the moment where everything begins to change, because ownership isn't about being the boss. It's about being responsible, even when it's hard, even when it's invisible, even when it goes unrewarded. For now, you don't need to be in charge to act like someone who cares. But this brings us to something even more foundational. You can adopt the right mindset. You can build discipline. You can chase long-term goals. But if you surround yourself, people who drain you, who dismiss your growth, who normalize mediocrity, then no matter how strong your stride is, you'll keep getting pulled backward. That's why the next lesson may be the most important one of all. Lesson 6. Choose. Your circle you become, almost inevitably like the people you spend the most time with. Not just in your habits, not just in your results, but in your energy, your optimism, your hunger. That's the law of emotional gravity. Sometimes the people closest to you aren't holding you back because they're malicious. They're not toxic. They're just stuck. And without realizing it, their stuckness becomes your ceiling. Their fear becomes your hesitation. Their limitations become your assumptions. And over time, without ever making a conscious choice, you begin to shrink. Here's the problem. Your mind doesn't need to be filled with negativity to be affected. It just needs to be surrounded by it. Negativity is like background noise. You don't notice it until one day you can't hear yourself think. Let me give you a picture. Imagine you're in a boat, rowing hard toward your dream. But the people next to you, they're rowing in the opposite direction. You may not notice it at first. You think, "I'm strong enough, I'm focused enough, I'll get there anyway." But over time, your effort doesn't get you closer to the goal. It just gets you nowhere. You're stuck. And it's not because you weren't capable. It's because you were surrounded by people whose momentum was moving the other way. Even the Bible gives us a vivid warning about this. Lot, a righteous man, chose to live near Sodom, a place known for its corruption. He didn't jump into it all at once. He was just nearby. But over time, the environment eroded his clarity. When it was time to leave, he couldn't. He had to be dragged out. That's how it works. You don't fall all at once. You drift. Quietly. Slowly. Until you're in a place you never intended to be. So ask yourself, where are you drifting? Back in the real world, the same law applies. Some conversations leave you lit up, inspired, hungry, ready to build. Others leave you drained, small, lost. Science calls this emotional contagion. One study found that if someone in your circle is happy, your own likelihood of happiness rises by 15%. but it works in reverse too. Negativity spreads just as fast, if not faster. And the scariest part? Negative influence doesn't need your permission. It just needs your silence. Every time you sit through a lazy excuse, a bitter complaint, a conversation built on blame and avoidance, you're not just listening, you're normalizing. And slowly you start living that way too, without even realizing it. You might be thinking, but I can't just cut people off. These are my coworkers, my family, my longtime friends. And you're right. Stoicism doesn't teach cold abandonment, but it does teach you the power of boundaries. Distance, when used wisely, is a form of love. If someone can't lift you up, don't let them pull you down. Protect your space like it's sacred, because it is. Here's something practical. Write down the 5 people you spend the most time with. Just names. Don't overthink it. Now ask yourself, after spending time with each one, do I feel stronger or more scattered? Do they challenge me to grow or pull me into old patterns? Do they talk more about progress or about why nothing ever works? If your answers make you uncomfortable, don't ignore that feeling. It's trying to tell you something. Adjust the list. You don't need to exile anyone. Just rebalance the weight they carry in your life. Choosing the right people isn't selfish, it's strategic. It's about clarity, about emotional alignment. You're not just managing your schedule, you're managing your influence field, the collective energy, beliefs, and habits of the people around you. You're building a foundation. Don't let anyone tunnel under it with doubt, drama, or distraction. And if you've ever felt lonely after stepping away from the wrong crowd, don't mistake that loneliness for a problem. That space is sacred. It's the quiet before the right people enter your life. And when they do, you'll be ready. Because you'll have spent the time building not just habits but standards. And that's how you rise, not just alone, but with others who lift you higher. Let's continue right where we left off, because this next insight might be the one that transforms everything you've heard so far into a way of living. Lesson 7. Live what you've learned. You can study all the ancient wisdom in the world. You can read every quote by Marcus Aurelius, underline every passage in Epictetus, memorize the habits of the most successful people, and still remain stuck. Why? Because knowledge doesn't change lives. Action does. Knowing how to think correctly isn't the same as living correctly. And if you're honest with yourself, you probably already know most of what you need. The question isn't, what do I need to learn? It's, what am I willing to live? That's where the rubber meets the road. Thinking right sounds great when everything is going well. It's easy to be reflective when the sun is shining and life is smooth. But what about when things fall apart? What about when you get blindsided? When someone insults you? When your plans unravel? When the day starts with optimism and ends in disappointment? That's where your mindset is revealed. Not shaped, but revealed. Right thinking isn't about staying positive. It's not about plastering over pain with pretty words. It's about building a foundation strong enough to hold you steady during the emotional earthquakes of life. Because life will shake. And in those moments, you won't have time to open a book. You won't be searching for podcasts or motivational quotes. You'll simply act. The question is, will your actions reflect wisdom or impulse? That's why Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about mastering it. It's not about turning into a robot. It's about remaining human but anchored, calm, present. The Stoic doesn't deny the storm. They walk through it, but they do it with intention, with clarity, and with control over themselves, even if they have no control over the world around them. And here's the honest truth. That kind of thinking only works if you practice it. Every single day. You can't think your way to Rome. You have to walk, step by step, through dust, delay, and doubt. You have to live your learning, and that's the part most people skip. They consume idea after idea, episode after episode, waiting for that one moment of magic. That perfect piece of insight that will flip a switch and solve everything. But that moment never comes. Because the transformation doesn't happen in knowing, it happens in doing. So here's the challenge I pose to you now. Stop asking, what more do I need to know? And start asking, am I doing what I already know? You say you believe in discipline, but are you still staying up late for no reason? You say persistence matters, but do you quit after a few days when results don't show? You say you value long-term thinking, but do your actions reflect that? Don't feel ashamed. Just get honest. Because honesty is the beginning of transformation, and transformation doesn't feel like a thunderclap. It doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It moves like morning light, quiet, steady, unmistakable. Every small decision you make matters. Every time you choose to hold your tongue instead of snapping back matters. Every time you write a paragraph instead of scrolling social media matters. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, no matter how small, it matters more than you think. And the beautiful thing is this: every one of those choices is a vote. A vote for the kind of person you are becoming. For the kind of life you are building. That's what people miss. They think big change requires big action, but it doesn't. Change is the result of small actions done consistently, with intention and care, and it leads us to this reality. You don't rise by accident. You rise when you stop explaining what you believe and start embodying it. As Epictetus once said, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Live it so completely that you don't need to convince anyone. Let your actions speak so loudly that your words become unnecessary. Because here's what most people overlook. The more you learn, the more tempted you become to keep learning and not acting. Learning becomes a hiding place. It feels like progress, but it isn't. It becomes a comfortable cocoon, safe, warm, intellectually satisfying, but stagnant. Real growth lives on the other side of discomfort, on the other side of imperfect, messy, courageous action. So stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for the right mood, the perfect timing, the missing piece. Start with what you already have. Start with where you already are, and act like someone who gets it. Now this final section brings everything together, not as a summary, but as a deeper challenge. We've explored the tools, long-term thinking, creating instead of complaining, embracing failure, learning without limits, adopting an ownership mindset, choosing your circle with intention. But now it's time for you to ask, am I ready to apply what I know? Because knowing isn't enough. Understanding isn't enough. Living, that's where the change begins. You don't need a breakthrough, you need to make a promise, a quiet, unwavering daily promise. That from this day forward you will do more than think right. You will act right, not just in grand, Instagram-worthy moments, but in the small, private, boring decisions. You'll stop preparing forever. You'll stop hiding behind readiness. You'll stop saying, one day, and you'll start saying, today. You'll stop breaking the little promises you make to yourself, because you'll understand. Each broken promise isn't just a missed goal. It's a signal to your brain that you can't be trusted. And when your own brain doesn't trust you, change becomes impossible. But every time you follow through, even in tiny ways, you begin to rewire that relationship. You begin to trust yourself again. And that trust becomes the foundation for real power, real confidence, real freedom. It's not magic. It's not mysticism. It's philosophy. Practiced, lived, breathed. It's what happens when you stop collecting ideas and start applying them. So here's how I want to close this chapter. We've walked through 7 timeless principles. Not buzzwords, not trends. Principles. Think long-term. Don't just live day to day. Design something enduring. Build instead of complain. Create value, even in the face of inconvenience. Turn failure into fuel. Let each setback refine, not define you. Learn without limits. Become a student of life every day. Adopt an ownership mindset. Stop waiting for someone to pick you. Choose yourself. Choose your circle. Surround yourself with people who elevate, not dilute your potential. Live what you know. Make every decision a reflection of your deepest values. If even one of these stirred something in you, hold on to that, because that feeling, that deep tug, isn't just inspiration, it's direction. It's your inner voice saying, you can live differently. You can become the person you were meant to be, but don't let it fade. Don't let this be just another good video, another saved clip, another moment of clarity that dies in the noise of tomorrow. Act. Even if it's imperfect, even if it's small, even if no one notices, because the moment you do, sincerely, quietly, you've already begun to change. And that's how it happens. Not in a dramatic explosion, but in a choice, in a breath, in a decision to live better today than you did yesterday. So, if this resonated with you, I'll leave you with this. Take one action today that your future self will thank you for. Just one. That's where the path begins. And I'll see you in the next video, where we'll continue this journey together, sharpening our minds, strengthening our character, and learning not just how to think right, but how to live right. Let's shift gears and go even deeper. So far, we've walked together through ideas that challenge your perception of time, action, growth, and inner resolve. But if we stopped here, we'd be standing on a foundation without building the house, because there's another principle, perhaps less talked about but just as crucial. It's this. Lesson 8. Discipline over motivation. Let's be honest. Motivation feels good. It's bright. It's exciting. It makes you feel like you can do anything on for about 15 minutes. But then it fades. That's its nature. Motivation is like a spark, brief, brilliant, but short-lived. It burns hot and dies quickly if you don't have something sturdier beneath it. And that something is discipline. You've probably heard the saying, don't rely on motivation, rely on discipline. But have you ever stopped to really think about what that means? Discipline is showing up even when the spark is gone. It's doing what's necessary, especially when you don't feel like it. It's the quiet force that builds empires while others are still waiting to feel ready. Here's what the Stoics knew, what they lived. A good life isn't made in moments of inspiration. It's made in the repetition of steady, sometimes boring, often thankless effort. Discipline is what Marcus Aurelius practiced each morning as he wrote in his journal, reminding himself of death, of duty, of patience, of what it means to be a good man. He didn't do it for applause. He didn't do it because it felt good every time. He did it because he knew, if I don't train my mind daily, I will drift. And drifting is the default. The world isn't designed to keep you on track. It's designed to distract, to fragment your focus, to make you reactive instead of reflective. That's why discipline matters so much, because it anchors you when the winds of distraction start to pull. It's like training a muscle. The more often you show up, the more resilient you become. Discipline doesn't always look impressive. Sometimes it's just going to bed on time. Sometimes it's saying no to one more scroll. Sometimes it's opening the book you promised you'd finish, even if your brain is begging for dopamine elsewhere. But each time you honor the small commitment, you're shaping a new identity. You're casting a vote for the version of yourself that wins quietly. That's where real power comes from. And here's something else. Discipline is self-respect in motion. You say you care about your future? Prove it. Not with big declarations, but with daily decisions. Every time you skip the gym, you reinforce that short-term comfort matters more than long-term strength. Every time you snooze your alarm, you whisper to yourself, "My goals can wait." That's not shame. That's a wake-up call. Because once you see discipline not as punishment but as love, everything changes. Discipline is how you honor your vision, even when no one else sees it yet. Think of it like this. Motivation is a friend who shows up when life is exciting. Discipline is the one who sticks around when the room is quiet, when your energy is low, when the journey gets cold. Discipline is what keeps you going when progress is invisible. And that's a crucial truth. Most meaningful growth is invisible at first. You won't always see results on day 3, week 1, or even month 2. You'll plant seeds and see no sprouts for a while. You'll show up and feel like nothing's moving. And in those moments you'll want to quit. But if you do, you'll never know what was just around the corner. Discipline is what bridges that gap. It's what carries you through the fog until the horizon clears. Let me ask you something. What would your life look like if you just kept one promise to yourself for the next 90 days? One small promise. Waking up on time. Writing 200 words. Drinking water. Making your bed. Saying no to that toxic distraction. Meditating for 5 minutes. What if you kept it every day? It might not change the world, but it would change you, and you. Changing changes everything. Because here's what people forget. Discipline compounds, not just in results, but in identity. Each act of discipline makes it easier to believe. I'm the kind of person who follows through. And once you believe that, you become unstoppable. It's no longer about willpower. It's about alignment. You're no longer fighting yourself. You're proving yourself over and over again. That's what Stoicism demands. Not perfection, but consistency, integrity, alignment between what you say you value and how you actually live. Let's go even further. Lesson 9. Focus over frenzy. In today's world, distraction is easy. It's everywhere. In your pocket, on your wrist, in your workspace, on your feed. We've become addicted to motion but not progress. We think multitasking makes us efficient, but often it just makes us busy, burned out and broken in focus. And the Stoics, and centuries before smartphones, understood this deeply. They believed in single-minded clarity, in presence, in doing what's in front of you with your full heart and attention. Seneca wrote, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." Let that sink in. Every time you half read an article, half listen to a conversation, half do your work while checking your phone, you're robbing yourself of power, because power lives in presence, in focus, in depth. And this isn't just philosophical, it's neurological. Your brain doesn't thrive on scattered input. It thrives on deep work, the kind that stretches you, challenges you, forces you to bring your full self to the task. That's how mastery happens, not through jumping from thing to thing, but by dwelling in something long enough to understand it. We've glorified hustle culture, but hustle without direction is just exhaustion with a fancy name. Frenzy is not the same as progress. So if you feel overwhelmed, stuck, constantly chasing but never arriving, pause, breathe, then ask, what is essential here? What really matters? What's the one thing that if I focused on it fully, would move everything else forward? You don't need 10 goals. You need one clear aim and the courage to ignore everything else for a while. That's not laziness. That's wisdom. When you focus deeply, you move faster and more meaningfully. Distraction is expensive, not just in time but in identity. It fractures your self-belief, makes you doubt your capacity, weakens your ability to complete. Focus is the antidote. Focus is how you reclaim your energy, your hours, your mind. So here's your challenge. Choose one area of your life, just one, that you've been scattered in. Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's your work. Maybe it's your relationships. Now commit to showing up with full presence for the next 7 days. No multitasking, no background noise, no half-hearted effort. Just you, the task, and the decision to be excellent. See what happens. You might be surprised how much you already have once you stop splitting your attention into 1,000 pieces, because when you focus, you reclaim control. And control, dear listener, is the beginning of peace. Focus is how you stop surviving and start shaping your life. Focus is how you step out of chaos and into clarity. It's not about doing more. It's about doing less, but doing it well. Because at the end of the day, success isn't found in the flurry. It's found in the follow-through. And follow-through comes from one thing: the quiet power of presence. Let's continue with this journey, not just into the intellect, but into the soul. Because the next truth we need to talk about is something many ignore, until they're already depleted. Lesson 10. Protect your energy. Like it's sacred, there's a silent war happening in your life. Not the kind with explosions or chaos, but a subtler, more corrosive battle. The war for your attention and your energy. Most people don't lose because they're lazy. They lose because they're leaking. They leak mental energy into social media arguments they'll never win. They leak emotional energy into conversations that go in circles. They leak spiritual energy by worrying about things they don't control. And over time, those little leaks create fatigue, not just of the body, but of the spirit. You wake up tired, even if you've slept. You feel burned out, even though you haven't done anything meaningful. And you wonder why your motivation feels like it's dried up. But here's the truth. You cannot build a focused, meaningful life if your energy is constantly being hijacked. So what do? You defend it. You defend your energy like it's a scarce and sacred resource, because it is. That doesn't mean being selfish. It means being strategic. It means recognizing that not everyone gets a front row seat to your life. It means noticing which activities drain you and which ones restore you. It means asking, not just how much time something will take, but what kind of energy it costs. Think about that. Some tasks are physically tiring but emotionally nourishing, like a hard workout or a deep creative session. Others seem small on the surface but leave you feeling heavy afterward. A pointless meeting, a gossipy call, a passive-aggressive text. Energy has layers: physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. And the Stoics? They understood this well. They knew that preserving the inner fire was the only way to withstand outer storms. So they practiced restraint, not out of repression, but out of protection. They weren't silent because they were weak. They were silent because they had learned that not every battle deserves their sword. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." So much of our exhaustion isn't from what's happening. It's from the mental commentary we attach to it. We replay the insult. We magnify the inconvenience. We project failure before it even happens. All of that takes energy. So here's a question. Where are you giving your energy freely and unnecessarily? Who are the people, platforms, patterns that steal your focus? Once you identify them, don't just complain about them. Create boundaries, not just physical ones but mental ones, because boundaries aren't walls. They're filters. They're how you choose what gets to shape your inner world. And when you do this, when you guard your energy, you begin to operate from a deeper place of power. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop rushing. You start moving with rhythm. Your thoughts become clearer. Your actions more deliberate. Your presence more alive. You become someone who carries peace. And in a world of noise, that kind of calm is magnetic. So if you've been feeling tired, distracted, constantly on, ask yourself, is it time to reclaim my energy? Is it time to say no, not because you're mean, but because you're focused? Is it time to stop explaining yourself to people who have no intention of understanding you? Is it time to leave some messages on read so you can answer the ones that matter? This is not about arrogance. It's about stewardship. You've been entrusted with a mind, a body, a spirit. Protect them. Nurture them. They are your foundation for everything else. And once you do that, once your energy is no longer being drained by the unnecessary, you can pour it into something higher, which leads us to the next principle. Lesson 11. Serve something greater than yourself. Let's go deeper now, not just into your habits, but into your purpose. Because no matter how productive, disciplined, or focused you are, your life will still feel empty if it's not connected to something bigger. And in modern culture, we've become hyper-focused on the self. My goals, my brand, my image, my gain. But you weren't built to orbit around yourself forever. That kind of inward spiral creates a hollow core. It might feel exciting at first, empowering even, but eventually, it turns into isolation, disconnection, meaninglessness. The Stoics knew this well. They didn't just teach self-control, they taught service. Service to family, to society, to virtue, to the common good. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, didn't see himself as special. He saw himself as a servant, a steward of responsibility. He wrote, "What is not good for the beehive cannot be good for the bee." In other words, you thrive best when the world around you thrives too. And you don't need to be an emperor to live like this. You can serve through your presence, through the way you uplift others, through the standards you uphold, through the kindness you give with no expectation. The happiest, most resilient people aren't the ones constantly chasing validation. They're the ones who wake up knowing, I am part of something bigger. They see their work as contribution, not just compensation. They see their relationships as sacred, not transactional. They see strangers as fellow travelers, not threats. They move through life as gardeners, not consumers. And when you serve like that, not from obligation, but from conviction, something changes in your posture. You stop being desperate for recognition. You stop trying to prove your worth. You stop chasing fulfillment and start creating it. Because purpose doesn't come from what you get. It comes from what you give. And when you align your actions with service, even your hardest days feel meaningful. Even the struggle becomes sacred. Even your pain becomes a bridge for someone else's healing. Think of the people who have impacted your life most. Were they the richest? The smartest? The the most powerful? Or were they the ones who saw you, listened to you, made time for you, the ones who gave something real when they didn't have to? That's impact, that's purpose. And here's the paradox. When you serve something greater, you don't become less important. You become more grounded, more fulfilled, more resilient. Because now you're not just living for pleasure or success or image. You're living for legacy. So here's a challenge. Ask yourself, what am I building that outlasts me? What am I doing every week that adds value beyond my own gain? You don't need a nonprofit to do this. You just need intent. You just need to wake up and ask, how can I make the world even 1% better today? It could be as small as encouraging someone, as humble as picking up trash, as powerful as choosing forgiveness. Every act of service is a thread in a much larger tapestry, and over time, those threads weave a life of unshakable purpose. Not loud, not flashy, but eternal. So if you're searching for something more, if you're tired of empty highs and temporary wins, if you're ready to stop chasing and start building, begin here, with service. Not as a burden, but as a way of being. Because the moment you stop asking, or what can I get, and start asking, what can I give, you become free. We've talked about long-term thinking, about learning, about building a life rooted in purpose, in service, in clarity. Now let's talk about one of the most difficult, but necessary, acts of courage. Lesson 12. Let go to move forward. Sometimes the heaviest things we carry are things we're no longer meant to hold. Not physical burdens, but emotional ones. Outdated beliefs, toxic relationships, unrealistic expectations. Old versions of ourselves that we keep dragging behind us out of habit or guilt. And what's tragic is that most people don't even realize they're carrying all this. They think their exhaustion is from working too much. But often, it's from holding on to something that no longer belongs in their life. The Stoics taught us this. You must learn to let go, not because it's easy, but because holding on too tightly will break you. You must unclench the fist. You must surrender what you cannot control. You must forgive what has already passed. You must mourn what didn't work out, not to stay stuck in sorrow, but to finally move on. Marcus Aurelius said, "Receive without pride, let go without attachment." That's not apathy, that's freedom, that's emotional maturity. Let's bring this home. What are you still holding on to that's weighing you down? Maybe it's a dream that didn't unfold the way you planned. Maybe it's a version of success that was never really yours, but something you inherited from someone else. Maybe it's a person who once mattered, but no longer respects your growth. Letting go isn't quitting. It's choosing to make space for the new, the aligned, the true. Because until you release the old, you won't have hands free to receive the next chapter. Your future is not waiting for you to become someone else. It's waiting for you to release who you no longer need to be. But letting go isn't passive. It's an act. It's a decision. It's a practice. You don't do it once. You do it over and over until it no longer hurts to loosen your grip. And eventually, one day you look down and realize you're no longer holding on to the weight. The weight was holding on to you, and you've finally let it go. This practice of release, of renewal, is the very heartbeat of a Stoic life. It allows you to remain light, flexible, and resilient. It frees you from bitterness. It keeps your spirit clean. It allows your mind to be clear for what really matters now. Let's get even more practical. Here are 5 things you can start letting go of this week. The need to be right. It drains your energy, fuels your ego, and distances you from others. Seek truth, not victory. The desire to please everyone. You were not born to be everyone's favorite. You were born to live honestly, kindly, and bravely. The weight of past mistakes. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to forgive yourself. Learn the lesson, and then set yourself free. The fear of change. Every breakthrough lives on the other side of change. Comfort zones are cozy, but nothing meaningful grows there. The toxic voice inside you that says you're not enough. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to keep going. Each of these releases will feel scary, but you'll feel lighter after, because letting go isn't about what you're losing. It's about what you're finally making room to gain. Let's make this even deeper. When you let go of things outside your control, you suddenly become aware of the one thing that has always been within your grasp. Your response, your breath, your attitude, your actions. This is the core of Stoic thinking. When the world spins out of control, go inward. When others behave unjustly, choose justice anyway. When life doesn't go according to plan, walk with dignity, because your true power is not found in circumstances, it's found in character. The Stoics weren't obsessed with changing the world. They were committed to not letting the world change them. That's real strength, and it leads to the next shift. Become the example you wish existed. We often look outside of ourselves for role models, for inspiration, for proof that greatness is possible. But what if that person you've been waiting for is you? What if the mentor you never had is waiting inside your courage? What if your story, your quiet persistence, your everyday acts of courage, could one day be the reason someone else doesn't quit? That's the beauty of living well. You don't need to be famous to be legendary. You don't need millions of followers to leave a legacy. You just need to live your values, fully and without apology. Be the calm in a chaotic room. Be the consistent one when others fall away. Be the voice of reason when others are loud with fear. Be the person who doesn't compromise their integrity for applause. People are watching. Even when you think no one notices, and your quiet strength might be the inspiration they didn't even know they needed. You become powerful not by controlling others, but by controlling yourself. You become radiant not by trying to impress, but by living with alignment. That's Stoic excellence. Not loud. Not boastful, but grounded, focused, enduring. Here's a truth few talk about. The most inspiring people in your life probably never set out to inspire you. They were just doing their work, loving their family, building in silence, healing in private. And one day, you looked at them and thought, if they can keep going, so can I. So stop waiting for a role model. Start becoming one. Not out of pride, but out of possibility. Start carrying yourself like someone whose life will be studied one day, not for fame, but for how well they lived when no one was watching. When you do that, when you walk like a leader before anyone gives you a title, when you embody values before you're celebrated for them, you begin to step into a different level of power. And power, properly channeled, becomes peace. Peace because you no longer need to prove. Peace because you know who you are. Peace because your life speaks for you. Let's land this with something simple, but life-changing. Ask less. What do I want? Ask more. Who am I becoming? That's the real question, because life doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what you're ready for, what you've prepared for, what you've become strong enough to carry. So today, ask yourself, am I becoming someone I admire? Would I trust myself with the life I'm asking for? Do my habits match my hopes? Because when who you are aligns with what you want, that's when things shift, not magically, but powerfully. And that's when you stop chasing results and start embodying identity, because it's not the goal that changes you, it's who you become on the way. Let's continue by taking everything we've uncovered about discipline, letting go, focus, service, and asking one vital unifying question. What kind of life are you quietly building? Because whether you realize it or not, you're building something. Every choice you make, what time you wake up, who you spend time with, what you consume, how you respond to difficulty, each one is a brick. And those bricks are stacking up. Day by day, silently, irrevocably. They're forming the walls and rooms of the life you'll eventually live inside. Some people don't even notice they're building until they look around one day and find themselves stuck in a house of habits they never meant to construct. Others build with care, with precision, with the long view in mind. They pause before laying each brick. They ask, will I want to live in this tomorrow? That's the essence of deliberate living. It's not about controlling everything. It's about choosing your inputs with clarity, because you understand. What you repeat becomes your reality. Let's go deeper. Your life is not built in grand declarations. It's built in micro decisions. The decision to stretch or scroll, to prepare or procrastinate, to forgive or fester, to be silent or speak up, to start or stall. And most of those decisions, they happen when no one is watching. When there's no reward, no applause, just you and a choice. And that's what makes them powerful. Because it's in those unglamorous, quiet, seemingly unimportant moments that your identity is forged. That's what the Stoics believed. They didn't build their lives on events. They built them on principles. They asked not just what should I do, but what kind of person would I like to become? That's where their clarity came from. And that's the question you can return to anytime you feel lost. What kind of person am I choosing to become today? Through this decision, this response, this habit? Because the truth is, you're never really stuck. You're just standing in a pattern, a rhythm of thought and action that may have served you once, but isn't serving you anymore. And the good news? Patterns can be changed, not by willpower alone, but by replacement. You don't break a bad habit by fighting it head-on. You replace it with a better one that aligns with your vision. Because willpower fades, identity stays. If you see yourself as a disciplined person, you don't need to convince yourself to show up. You just show up. If you see yourself as a learner, you don't need motivation to open the book. It's just what you do. This is why working on your identity is more powerful than obsessing over outcomes. When you focus only on results, money, praise, progress, you become reactive, controlled by the external. But when you focus on identity, the external becomes secondary. You become internally driven. Let's break this down. Say your goal is to get fit. You could say, I want to lose weight. That's a result-based approach. Or you could say, I want to become someone who values health, consistency, and discipline. That's an identity-based approach. One fades as soon as you miss a day. The other grows stronger with every small choice, because it's not about the scale, it's about the standard. That's Stoic thinking. Forget flashy goals, ask instead, what standard am I willing to live by even when no one's watching? And here's something else most people don't realize. Identity is not fixed. You don't have to wait to become worthy of change. You just have to start acting like the version of you that's already worthy. And with every action that aligns, your mind begins to shift. You start saying, I'm not someone who's trying to be disciplined. I am disciplined. I'm not trying to build something meaningful. I am building it. That shift in language might seem small, But it changes everything, because now you're not chasing alignment. You are alignment. You're no longer a wanderer hoping to stumble onto purpose. You're a builder, crafting it one brick at a time. This brings us to a crucial mindset shift. Stop trying to fix everything all at once. Too many people give up not because they're incapable, but because they try to overhaul their entire life in one swoop. They write out massive to-do lists, radical goals, grand resolutions, and for 2 days it feels amazing. Then they miss a step, then another, and suddenly, shame creeps in. Momentum dies, and the old rhythm returns. But Stoic living doesn't work like that. It's not about sprints, it's about sustainability. Consistency over intensity. One change at a time. One habit at a time. One moment of self-respect multiplied daily. James Clear, in Atomic Habits, says it beautifully. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. So forget perfect plans, focus on better systems. Start small. Make it obvious. Make it easy. Make it repeatable. Because the goal isn't to transform overnight. The goal is to build something that lasts. And things that last and are never rushed. Let me give you an image. Imagine a sculptor with a block of marble. He doesn't attack it with a chainsaw. He carves, slowly, chip by chip. He doesn't try to make it look perfect in one day. He knows the form is already there. He just needs to uncover it. That's your job. You don't need to become someone new. You need to unearth the person you were meant to be. Before distraction, fear, comparison, and excuses got in the way. You are the sculptor and the sculpture. And the chisel? That's your daily discipline. Your micro-decisions. Your quiet standard. You are carving your life, right now. So ask yourself, what kind of sculpture am I shaping? What kind of structure am I standing inside? Is it something I'm proud of, or something I've settled for? Because you have a choice. Today, not next year, not when things slow down, not once I get motivated, right? Now, you can decide to live with clarity, to stop negotiating with your standards, treat your life like it matters, because it does. And that doesn't require perfection. It requires ownership, that's all, because when you own your direction, everything else falls into place. It won't always be easy, but it will always be worth it. You'll look back one day, not with regret, but with gratitude. You'll know, I built this, I became this, I chose this. And that is the deepest form of power. Let's keep going. You've been building, not just understanding these ideas, but beginning to embody them. And now we step into a new, final phase of your inner architecture. Because here's a truth that will determine whether your growth is temporary or transformational. You must build a life that reinforces who you want to become. That means this. Don't just try to change yourself. Change your environment. Change your routine. Change your inputs, what you see, hear, and engage with daily. You see, it's incredibly hard to become someone new while living in the exact same context that shaped the older version of you. You're not failing because of lack of willpower. Often you're failing because you're trying to grow in soil that doesn't support it. It's like trying to grow an oak tree in a swamp. You plant the right seeds. You water them. You hope. But the ground is too wet, too unstable, too acidic. And after a while you think, maybe this seed just wasn't good. But it's not the seed, it's the system. So if you want to rise, you need to reorganize your surroundings to reflect and reinforce your new standards. Let's make this practical. Start by auditing your environment. Your home. Is it cluttered? Distracting? Is it designed for consumption or for creativity? Your digital space. Are your social media feeds filled with fear, gossip, envy? Or are they filled with value, clarity, direction? Your calendar. Do your days reflect your priorities, or do they reflect other people's urgency? Because if your external world contradicts your internal goals, you will burn out trying to bridge the gap. So change the room, not just metaphorically, literally. Move your desk. Clear your shelves. Create a physical space that reflects mental clarity. It doesn't have to be expensive or elaborate. It just has to support the person you're trying to become. Make that the golden rule. If it doesn't support who I'm becoming, it doesn't belong. That includes objects, platforms, people. No drama, no blame, just realignment. Because here's something powerful. When your environment changes, your behavior changes almost automatically. This isn't opinion, it's science. In the book Willpower Doesn't Work, Benjamin Hardy explains that your environment is the invisible hand shaping 90% of your behavior. And unless you change it, your progress will feel like swimming against a current. But once your environment is on your side, it becomes effortless. You wake up into a life that nudges you toward growth. Not guilt, not resistance, just natural motion forward. That's how you scale discipline, by making it easier to win. And if that still sounds too abstract, let's go even simpler. Want to read more? Put a book on your pillow. Want to eat better? Keep healthy food visible, not buried in the back of the fridge. Want to spend less time online? Remove the shortcut from your phone's home screen. Want to journal? Keep your notebook on your desk, not in a drawer. These small shifts aren't small. They're strategic. They remove friction between you and your ideal life. They take what you want and make it feel normal. And that's when growth sticks. Because it's no longer just about forcing change. It's about living inside of it. Let's go even further. Once your environment is supporting you, you can turn your focus to something even more powerful. Daily rituals. That anchor. Your rituals are not routines. Routines are habits you do. Rituals are habits you honor. They carry meaning. They remind you, this is who I am. This is what I value. This is the life I'm choosing. Again. The Stoics lived by rituals. Morning reflection, evening journaling, midday pause for breath and reason. Why? Because even the most powerful minds forget. Even the wisest souls drift. Even the strongest hearts falter without realignment. So they built rituals, not for productivity, but for presence. Ask yourself, what's the first thing you do when you wake up? Does it root you or rush you? Does it align you or distract you? Even 5 minutes of intention can shift your entire day. Read a passage. Breathe. Write your priorities by hand. Revisit your why. Then enter the world on purpose, because the world is noisy. You need something to anchor you before it floods in. And at night, don't just scroll until your brain collapses. Close your day with closure. Ask, what did I do? Well, what needs improvement? What am I grateful for? How can I live 1% better tomorrow? This takes 5 minutes. But over a year, it rewires your soul. And that's the point. You don't become stoic in theory. You become stoic in rhythm. Through repetition, reflection, refinement. Through building a life that whispers, every day, you're walking the right way. Now here's a truth that may be hard to accept. Not everyone will understand your growth. And that's okay. Some people loved the older version of you. The version who stayed small, stayed soft, stayed silent. The version who didn't have boundaries, who didn't ask for more, who didn't evolve. When you start to rise, you'll unsettle them, not because you're wrong, but because your growth exposes their comfort zone. And some will try to pull you back, not out of hate, but out of fear. Fear that if you change, the world around them will change too. And it will. So you need to be ready for this. You need to understand that growth requires solitude, even if only for a while. You may have to walk alone before the right people walk with you. You may need to disappoint others to remain true to yourself, and you may need to accept that peace, clarity, and freedom sometimes come at the cost of familiarity. But here's the good news. You are not alone. You're not the only one walking this path. Others are out here too. Quiet builders, patient warriors, people who are growing, not loudly, but faithfully. People who are choosing to live well, not for applause, but for alignment. And the more you walk in truth, the more those people will find you. Not by chasing, but by recognition. They'll see your standards. They'll feel your presence and they'll say, "You too?" That's the power of building a life rooted in right thinking. It attracts what aligns. It repels what doesn't. And it gives you something that no temporary success ever could. A life you're proud to return to every single day. Not because it's perfect, but because it's yours, built by you, brick by brick, with love, with clarity, with courage. And that, more than anything, is what makes it beautiful. You've come far, not just in understanding the ideas we've explored, but in feeling them settle into the fabric of your life. By now you know, this isn't about motivation, it's about transformation. It's not about pushing harder for a few days. It's about reshaping how you think, how you act, and how you show up, day in and day out. And all of that leads us here, to a cornerstone that brings everything else to life. Purposeful motion. Turning clarity into action, you see, most people get stuck, not because they lack intention, but because they've never learned how to turn that intention into movement. They wait for a perfect moment. They wait for inspiration. They wait for guarantees, and in doing so, they weight themselves into stagnation. But clarity is only useful if it becomes action. You can know where you want to go. You can know who you want to be. But until you start walking, until your life starts to reflect that inner vision, it stays just that, a vision. That's why the Stoics weren't just thinkers. They were doers. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations not to impress others, but to hold himself accountable to his principles, because what you do reveals what you truly believe. So let's get practical. You've set your vision. You've built your mindset. You've adjusted your environment. Now ask, what is one thing I can do today, right now, that would align me with the life I want? Don't aim for 10 things. Start with one small, real thing. It could be a 5-minute conversation you've been avoiding. It could be finally opening that book you bought months ago. It could be cleaning your space to reclaim your mental clarity. What matters is that it's real, because real action builds momentum, and momentum is more powerful than motivation. Once you move, you create feedback. Once you see progress, you create belief, and belief multiplies action. That's the loop, not hustle, not hype, but rhythm, clarity, action, feedback, growth. So often we wait to feel ready, but readiness isn't a feeling. It's a result of movement. You become ready by doing, you gain clarity by engaging. Don't wait to know enough. Don't wait for all the lights to turn green. The most powerful journeys begin with foggy roads and a simple step forward. You'll figure out the rest as you go. That's the beauty of aligned action. It doesn't just get you results, it sharpens your awareness, your discipline, your identity. And with each step, you stop being someone who's trying to grow, and become someone who is growing. Which brings us to another truth. Self-trust is earned, not given. When people say, "I lack confidence," what they often mean is, "I've broken too many promises to myself." You've said you'd start, but you didn't. You've said you'd change, but you hesitated. You've said you'd stop, but you went back. Each time your brain registers that, and over time, it starts to doubt you, not because you're weak, but because you've taught it not to believe your own words. But the beautiful thing, you can retrain that belief. One promise at a time. You don't need to overhaul your life in a weekend. You need to start keeping small promises. Wake up when you said you would. Finish that one task on your list. Do the workout you committed to, even if it's short. And when you do, celebrate it. Let your brain know. See? We followed through. Because each time you do, your confidence grows, not from praise or applause, but from proof. And that kind of confidence is unshakable, because it's not built on image, it's built on evidence. Self-trust is the foundation of every great life. Without it, you question everything. With it, you move boldly, even in uncertainty. That's what the Stoics had. They didn't need certainty. They had inner stability. They weren't immune to failure, but they trusted themselves to rise again. That trust gave them freedom, and it can give you freedom too. But it starts with this question: what is one promise I can make to myself today and actually keep? Make it small, make it clear, and make it sacred, because how you treat your own words shapes how much power you carry. You can be brilliant, you can be talented, but if your own mind doesn't trust your voice, you'll always hesitate. But if you build that trust, you'll become unstoppable, because then action isn't just something you try, it becomes something you do. Now let's talk about something deeper: power of integrity. You may not hear this word often in today's culture, but it's the invisible force that determines whether your life feels aligned or divided. Integrity isn't about being perfect, it's about being whole, about being the same person in private that you are in public. It's about making choices that reflect your deepest values, even when no one's watching. Because the greatest cost in life isn't money, or failure, or judgment. It's the cost of living out of alignment with who you know you could be. That cost shows up as anxiety, as restlessness, as exhaustion that no amount of rest can fix. Because when your soul knows you're meant for more, and you keep playing small, it hurts. Not because life is unfair, but because you're betraying your own potential. And that's where integrity becomes your compass. It's not just about morality, it's about energy. When you live in alignment, your energy flows clean. Your actions match your beliefs. Your words match your intentions. You don't need to remember what you said, because you live it. You don't need to pretend, because you're congruent. That alignment is magnetic. It gives you quiet power, and it gives others a reason to trust you, not just what you say, but who you are. So ask yourself, where am I out of alignment? Where do my actions contradict my values? Where have I settled for convenience instead of truth? These questions aren't meant to shame you, they're meant to awaken you, because once you spot the cracks, you can begin to repair them. And as you do, you become whole again. Not perfect, whole. And from that wholeness comes clarity, strength, and a sense of peace that doesn't need validation. That's integrity. It's not loud, it's not glamorous, but it's powerful, and it's rare. Which is why, when you cultivate it, you stand out, quietly but unmistakably. So as you move forward, remember, success is great, growth is essential, discipline is powerful, but integrity is the container that holds it all. Without it, you build a life that looks good but feels hollow. With it, you build a life that may be quieter, but one that nourishes you from the inside out. And at the end of the day, that's what this is about. Not just thinking better, not just doing more, but becoming someone you deeply respect. That kind of life, it doesn't scream, it doesn't chase, it doesn't need to, it simply radiates. We're close now to the end of this chapter, yes, but more importantly, to a place where your inner and outer life begin to align. You've heard the ideas, you've considered the shifts, you've started to ask better questions. Now let's talk about what holds it all together. Let's talk about ownership, the kind that begins with your mind, but stretches into every area of your life. The shift from reactor to creator. You can walk through life in one of two ways. As a reactor, where life throws things at you and you're constantly trying to keep up, duck, adjust, survive. Or as a creator, where you design your days, shape your choices, and, more often than not, decide your direction. Now, not everything is in your control, of course not, but much more is within your influence than you've probably allowed yourself to believe. The Stoics taught this beautifully. Epictetus said, "Some things are up to us, and some things are not." The trick, the freedom, is knowing the difference and focusing your energy on the former. Because when you take ownership of what is yours, your thoughts, your actions, your mindset, your attitude, you step into a new kind of power. You stop being the person who waits for conditions to improve, and you become the one who improves conditions, even in small ways, even when it's hard, even when no one else is doing it. This mindset isn't about being in charge of others. It's about being in charge of yourself. Ownership doesn't mean you don't fall. It means when you do, you don't point fingers, you reflect, you take responsibility, and you rise. Because here's the truth, your energy is finite, and every second you spend blaming, complaining, or resenting is energy you could have used to build, heal, improve, and grow. So the question becomes, where are you leaking your power? Are you waiting for someone to notice you instead of making yourself visible? Are you blaming your lack of progress on circumstances when your habits tell a different story? Are you hoping someone else will open the door while the key has been in your pocket all along? Owning your life is uncomfortable at first. It removes your excuses. But that discomfort, it's the beginning of strength. And over time it becomes liberating. Because then, no matter what happens, you know this. You're not powerless. You may not control the storm, but you can always control how you sail. Living like an owner, not a tenant. Let's deepen the metaphor. Most people live their lives like tenants. They use the space, but they don't maintain it. They decorate the surface, but they don't invest in its foundation. When something breaks, they call someone else. They wait for someone else to fix it. To take responsibility, owners are different. Owners think long-term. They invest in the small stuff because they know it adds up. They care for the things no one sees. They don't wait to be told what matters. They decide what matters. Now think about your life. Are you living like a tenant, waiting for permission, avoiding hard truths, blaming the landlord? Or are you living like an owner, taking initiative, protecting your space, upgrading what's broken? This mindset applies to everything: your health, your career, your time, your relationships, your dreams. When you own something, you show up differently. You don't skip maintenance. You don't ignore red flags. You don't say, "It's not my job." You say, "If I don't handle this, who will?" That doesn't mean doing it all alone. It means you start by owning your role in the outcome. You step forward, not back. You ask, not what can someone give me, but what can I give? Because here's a subtle but life-changing truth. Value isn't found. It's created. We live in a culture that romanticizes discovery, as if one day you'll stumble upon your dream job, your ideal partner, your perfect path. But more often than not, these things aren't found. They're forged, not by chance, but by showing up again and again in places that matter. By asking, what can I build here that didn't exist before? That's what makes someone valuable, not their resume, not their talent, their mindset, their commitment to bring something of worth to every situation, no matter how small. In every room, every team, every challenge, you get to ask, how can I make this better? What's one thing I can contribute that no one else thought of? Where can I leave a fingerprint, a touch of excellence, even if no one sees it? That's how you become indispensable, not by waiting for someone to need you, but by becoming the kind of person they can't afford to lose. You build your value by building yourself daily. That's ownership in motion. That's a mindset that doesn't just adapt to the world, it quietly reshapes it, saying yes to responsibility and no to excuses. Now let's be honest, responsibility is heavy, and that's why most people avoid it. Because once you say, this is mine, you also accept the weight that comes with it. But here's the twist. The weight of responsibility makes you stronger. Excuses may feel lighter, but they make you weak. Every time you excuse yourself from doing the hard thing, the honest thing, the necessary thing, you chip away at your potential, you reinforce helplessness. But every time you take responsibility, even when it's unfair, even when it's hard, you get stronger. You become more trusted, more focused, more grounded. And eventually you stop fearing responsibility. You seek it out, not to prove yourself, but to refine yourself. Because each responsibility is like a training ground for the person you're becoming. Don't run from that. Step into it, even when it's inconvenient, especially when it's inconvenient. That's where character is forged. That's where leaders are made. The quiet power of standards. One final element of ownership. Standards. Not the ones set for you, but the ones you set for yourself. Because when no one's watching, your standards are the only guide you have. Do you finish what you start? Do you speak with honesty, even when it's uncomfortable? Do you give your best, even when no one else is? That's the hidden scaffolding of a powerful life. When your standards rise, your life rises with them, not because the world changes, but because you change how you engage with it. Raise your standards, not in loud declarations, but in quiet decisions, in small actions, in private discipline. Let others be casual. Let others drift. You choose to own your time, your energy, your contribution. Set the tone, not for applause, but because you know who you're becoming. That's the kind of ownership that changes your life from the inside out. That's the kind of person who walks through the world with quiet certainty. They're not waiting for a break. They're building one. They're not asking for a path. They're forging it. And as they walk, others notice, not because they shout, but because they shine. This is it. We've arrived at the final principle, the last thread in a tapestry of ideas that together can shift how you think, act, and live. But this last part isn't just a conclusion. It's a call to cross the threshold between knowing and doing. Take all the truths you've collected, not just from this video, but from your life, your experiences, your struggles, and make something real with them. Because right thinking only matters if it leads to right living. The gap between learning and living. Let's get something straight. You don't change your life by understanding something. You change your life by embodying it, by turning insight into action. Too many people confuse awareness with transformation. They read the books, highlight the quotes nod along to powerful ideas, and then go back to the same habits, the same thoughts, the same excuses. Why? Because learning is safe. Action is risky. When you learn, you're in control. You're collecting information, expanding your mind. But when you act, when you apply what you've learned, you open yourself to failure, judgment, vulnerability. And yet, that's where everything real begins. The Stoics didn't write philosophy to impress anyone. They wrote it to live it. Epictetus, a former slave, didn't sit in an ivory tower debating theories. He lived his philosophy through pain, injustice, hardship, and that's what gave his words power. He once said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Not because words don't matter, but because actions echo longer. So ask yourself, where are you still explaining, but not embodying? Where are you still preparing, but not moving?" Learning without living becomes a form of hiding. A beautifully constructed cage, but you're meant to fly free. And the only way out is through consistent, imperfect action. The quiet edits that rewrite a life. You don't need to overhaul everything overnight. Transformation doesn't require a grand announcement. Often, it begins with a whisper, a quiet edit to your day. You set your alarm a little earlier. You reach for the book instead of the phone. You go for a walk instead of numbing out. You speak a little more truth. You give a little more effort. You hold yourself to a slightly higher standard. These are small things, easy to dismiss. But in time, they form a new rhythm. And then one day, you look back, and your life is different. Not because a miracle happened, but because you built it, brick by quiet brick. The most extraordinary lives aren't built through fireworks. They're built through follow-through. So start small, but start real, and keep going. Don't just collect ideas, commit to them. Here's something no one tells you. The more you learn, the more tempted you'll be to keep learning. Instead of doing, knowledge can become a hiding place, a comfortable refuge where you feel like you're growing but nothing is changing. Don't fall into that trap. Don't become a philosopher of potential with no results. If something you've learned in this journey has moved you, then prove it with action. Don't just talk about long-term thinking. Practice it when you're tempted to take the shortcut. Don't just admire ownership. Show it when you feel like blaming. Don't just study discipline. Live it when motivation disappears. Every idea is a seed, but the fruit only comes when you cultivate it. So ask yourself, what's one idea you've heard today that you know you need to live out? Not someday, today, because if not now, when? You don't need permission. You already have the wisdom. The only thing left is willingness, the character you're voting for. Every action you take is a vote, not for a politician, but for a version of yourself. Each time you keep a promise, you vote for a disciplined version of you. Each time you choose honesty over comfort, you vote for a courageous version. Each time you persist despite failure, you vote for a resilient one. So what are you voting for today? When no one's watching, who are you building? This isn't about pressure. It's about power. You don't have to get it perfect, you just have to keep showing up. That's how legacies are built. That's how minds are changed. That's how real transformation happens. Not just out there, but in here. What you've built. So far, let's look back for a moment. You've walked through 7 powerful pillars of right thinking. Long-term thinking. The art of planting seeds today for trees that'll shade your future. Creating value instead of complaining. The discipline to build rather than blame. Turning failure into fuel. The mindset that sees every fall as data, not defeat. Learning without limits. The lifestyle of curiosity, humility, and constant growth. Thinking like an owner, taking full responsibility for your actions and your attitude. Choosing your circle wisely, protecting your energy by choosing who gets access to it. Living what you've learned, aligning your daily choices with your deepest truths. These aren't just lessons, they're tools. They're lenses to see the world differently, and levers to move your life in a new direction. But the only way they work is if you use them. So what now? What will you do with this? A final word from within. You've listened all the way through. That means something. You didn't skip ahead. You stayed with this journey, one word at a time. And I believe that's not an accident. It means something, and you is ready, not just for another idea, but for a new chapter. And here's the truth. No one else can write it for you. This is your pen now, your canvas, your turn. So as we close this video, don't let the insight fade. Let it live. Through you. In the next action you take, the next decision you face, the next challenge you rise to meet. You don't need another motivation video. You just need to move. And remember, no matter where you've been, no matter how far behind you feel, you're not lost, you're not broken, you're just becoming. And if you choose to act, not perfectly but genuinely, you've already begun to change. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, not just to my voice, but to the quiet truth inside you. Until next time, keep walking your path. Keep thinking right. And more importantly, keep living right. I'll see you in the next video. Sweet dreams.